Well, certainly been interesting 5 years, hasn't it? Of swings and roundabouts, and also, I might add, of of 99 million copies of main installment sold, plus a bit more. Factor in the spin-off titles, and as someone who openly admits to having every single physically released his Pokemon game for Switch so far. I mean, with Legend ZA, hey, looking a bit more tantalizing, I thought I would do a video on Pokémon Sword and Shield, 5 years since the initial release in the US. So let's begin. This is also going to be a bit more unconventional whole video I have, and talking about how even with the initial furor over the games, I'm noticing more and more people stating that all the things that they said initially they weren't entirely fair. Even people who I follow who were previously he he dead set against them admitted that a lot of the comments were a bit too harsh. So I think it might be a good idea to talk about why. So let's go over why these games, at least personally, to me, found success despite the initial concern faced with the changes. I mean, whenever certain segments of the fandom get this way about new generation of franchise, it's easy to forget that for a lot of people, well, some part in these titles come either first, and it's definitely really easy to get missed in that, and also the idea of repeat customers. I can definitely verify that I am one of the people who got their first Switch specifically for new mainline games as franchise. They were among the ones that drew me towards the system. Like with other choices including Zelda, Mario, Splatoon, and Smash Brothers, to name a few. Who and with that in mind, I think generally a lot of businesses want to keep people coming back. I mean, you don't need to make a whole documentary on the matter. I mean, it's pretty basic. No one ever just buys, say, one beverage or one lunch plate in their lives. I mean, generally, businesses want to keep people coming back, in many cases for years, and even if the core idea of the gameplay stays the same, changing stuff around it and iterating upon it is a necessary part of any franchise or era of gaming. If we didn't try to experiment in some way, we'd all still be playing Pong, which is currently in Smithsonian, I believe. And with that in mind, and it's definitely makes a solid enough transition to the next reason and why these titles hit. This is certainly not the only video game or pop culture franchise that can be attributed to this, but a lot of people found out the hard way that what works online is not always the same how it works in real life. As there's a lot of people, entire swaths of them, in fact, that weren't even aware here that this kind of foofah was even happening, and there's also other people like me who were never going to take part in that kind of a boycott. That I was, as long as I saw the gameplay and being iterated upon in unique ways, is I was always going to be picking these up on launch day. I mean, I wouldn't say they had to get multiple copies, like the whole "I'll take your entire stock" meme, but I can definitely officially say that I've logged well over 500 hours combined in this twin pack. I definitely think that I can try for 600 in the future combined. And with that being the case, there are times where here it's clear here that in many ways he's often saying and doing nothing can be as effective, not more so from a protest than and constantly banging the drum home that so much it'll causes disturbance of the peace. Peace, which I could even argue that at the discourse ended up working to the game's benefit of sales. It was selling with 6 million at launch and also introducing the idea to a bunch of people who would otherwise not have heard of the games at all. Oh, I mean, I can definitely sum it up before I move on to the next couple points, including my conclusion, and in 2 words: Streisand effect. It's not the only pop culture franchise I've seen this happen, but it is definitely another case where it's a story that's simple enough for a 10-year-old child to follow, yet complicated enough that we're continuing to talk about it decades later, and this game is no exception. In fact, I did insinuate fairly early on, noticing a lot of similarities between when Generation 3 was about to come out on the Game Boy Advance, and a lot of people informed were salty that they could not use their Team Level 100 for monsters of gold and silver or crystal in them, which caused a lot of people just to dismiss the idea here on site, and once again, even insinuating that the game's just going to die on the vine and it would just be dismissed as another fad. They were, of course, wrong about that, indeed. And even though Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald did not do the game busters that the first couple generations did, they still are collectively the Game Boy Advance's best-selling titles, almost by a landslide, with to my recollection, Ruby and Sapphire alone selling 8 million copies, with given how the GBA had a final install base around 80 million units, and it's in change, that would indicate that 1 in 10 people got Hoenn titles for their GBA, such as myself. And with that in mind, I can definitely also suggest that as the game actually came out and more people actually began to play it, a lot of the critiques were kind of overblown, as were some of the attempts to denigrate the titles. I mean, even someone who's the most complex title that they've designed is a space shooter, but understands that they're not developed the same way, that Zelda or Xeno titles are, and I typically, of course, was not going to be intimidated by the N64 tree insult as someone who has N64 as one of my favorite consoles, Now, if it looked like something from like a Jaguar CD, that would have been cause for trouble. My point is, there's a lot of people starting to look back more unfavorably upon these titles, especially given the state that Generation 9 launched in, but that will be a matter for another day, especially as it comes time to start wrapping this up. ultimately, I can look back at the whole National Dex kerfuffle for what I saw at the time, as in just a bunch of people in the fan base that ultimately end up being like a vocal minority, trying to throw around their weight, but in the long run, not getting their way. In fact, I would argue that not only did the boycott not have the intended effect, that it actually, as I stated, ended up getting more publicity for the titles, and play a large part in them remaining a top 10 best-selling games on the Switch to date, with over 26.4 million copies sold to date worldwide. I'd still among the best-selling titles in the franchise, and all things considered, it definitely actually bodes well for people sticking around for Generation 10, especially with persistent talk of a new Switch model coming as well. Say nothing of the hidden stabilities in ZA. I can definitely tell you this will not be the only game I'll be commemorating the milestone of this month. Count on that, in or out of the franchise. And now that my throat is more or less cleared up, I will definitely get back to you with that Master Strings vlog I wanted to do fairly soon, as well as working on some other scripts I've been meaning to do. That'll be all for now, so take care.